And the big dog of the week is going to be the Fox noon game of the week. It's big noon Saturday. Indiana Hoosiers are going on the road to face off against the Ohio State Buckeyes. This is going to be an interesting football game, Mason. Obviously, Indiana coming in undefeated has pretty much killed every team that they played other than Michigan, which was back on the 9th of November. Indiana is coming off of a bye week. Ohio State coming off of what I like to call a crock potting. And if you don't know what that means, that's where you throw all the ingredients in the crock pot, right? And you turn it on and you come back 3-4 hours later and it's done. And that's what happened to Ohio State. Slow cooked it at first, and then come back 4 hours later, and the meal was served. And 31-7, Ohio State was able to turn it on really in second, third, and fourth, and get the win there at I believe it was Wrigley Field is where that one was at. Over under for this one set at 52. Ohio State is a 13-point favorite. Last I saw, and I see kind of on the graphic there, it's 13.5 some places.
Mhm.
And here's the deal. This is what this game comes down to, Mason. Is this Indiana offense for real? And the reason I ask that is not that I have doubts, but how real are they, man? Because they're about to go against what I think is definitely top 3 defense in the country. This is going to be a tough matchup for any offense in the country. Any. So this isn't an Indiana problem. This is a rest of college football problem. How do you score points against this Ohio State Buckeyes defense? Oregon, I felt like, showed us somewhat of a path to do so. You're going to have playmakers in the wide receiver game, right? And you're going to have to be able to run the ball enough to keep defenses at bay and keep them from dropping everybody back and just zoning in on zone covers and intercepting passes and things like that. This team is really good. This is one of the most talented defenses we've seen this season. I think it's Ohio State. I think Texas. I think Georgia's got a pretty good defense, but I wouldn't consider Georgia as good as those two. Can Indiana move the football? I think it's simple, Mason. Curtis Rourke has had an amazing season, 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, done a great job protecting the football. Whatever Indiana does in this game, they've just got to avoid whatever happened in the second half of that Michigan game, because things came to a screeching halt there. And I'm a little concerned because a lot of it had to do with the run game. And Indiana coming into this game, I'm not feeling as though they're going to be able to run the ball for 150, 200 yards, Mason. I just don't think anybody's doing that against this defense. A lot of Ohio State fans and people who watched the Oregon game kind of complained about Ohio State's what their stance was on playing defense in that game. Didn't bring a whole lot of pressure, kind of just sat back and let Oregon do their thing and kind of tried to react to it. I'm interested to see if that's the position that Ohio State takes in this game, or if they dial up the pressure and come after this Indiana offense. That's going to be super interesting to me. It's an uphill battle for Indiana here. I mean, Ohio State, when they step on the field, they're typically the most talented team on that field, 9 times out of 10, and that's obviously going to be the case this weekend, as Ohio State has recruited just as well as anybody in the country. Indiana has not. Now they've gotten a ton of players through the transfer portal, a ton of them from James Madison. Curtis Signetti's done a really good job bringing people over from what was a successful situation at James Madison, and continues to be a successful situation, by the way. Curtis Rourke did not just leave and that program fell apart, and he built a program that is now sustaining and still winning. So really like Kirk Signetti here. I honestly like the coaching matchup of Kurt Signetti against Ryan Day. I like Signetti there, but the Jimmies and Joes, man, the Jimmies and Joes, and I'm worried about too many Jimmies and Joes kind of taking over the game, and it won't be as much of an X's and O's type of situation here. What are your thoughts? I'm not telling anybody anything that they didn't already know. everybody's on Ohio State right now, man.
Mhm.
Now, if I'm betting this game, Mason, I'm taking Indiana plus the points all day. You give me Indiana as an underdog this year, I'm going to ride that wave. I'm going to ride that wave. I'm going to be rooting for Indiana the whole game. There's zero doubt about that. I love the story. I want Indiana's story to continue, and I would love to see Indiana be able to knock Ohio State out of the playoffs, just to be honest with you.
Yeah. So remind me, Mark, but a few weeks ago, were you not with me on the idea that Indiana was going to beat Ohio State whenever they played
Yes.
against each other? You were
Yes.
you were there at some point, right? Okay. I
Yes.
honestly couldn't remember. But I was there too, and I was talking football with a customer of mine recently, and he said, "Yeah, man, I've been telling people that you think that Indiana can do it against Ohio State," and then I kind of realized that I told him that, and I was like, "No, don't tell people that. I don't want to be wrong," And I started kind of backtracking, and it had me thinking for a minute, like, why am I changing my opinion? Is it just because the game's about to be played and all of a
Yeah.
sudden it seems too good to be true that Indiana could win this game? Because nothing on the field should have or has happened that should have swayed me from my opinion. Nothing really, other than a 5 point win against Michigan. Right? That game was worse than the score indicated, and Michigan made it a game late. I liked Indiana from the get go in that game. They came out strong and then kind of slowed down just a little bit, took their foot off the gas a little bit. But my point is, nothing this season since we both kind of agreed that we were on the Indiana side of this has happened to where we should be taking Ohio State. Ohio State hasn't done anything to prove that, I guess, is a better way of wording that. So, to me, I'm trying to find ways that Indiana can win this game. Indiana's coming off of a bye. I think that Cignetti is going to have this team ready to play. They're going to have some schemes set up that Ohio State hasn't seen yet, right? I think that, and you mentioned the coaching battle. I definitely like Cignetti over Ryan Day, but even more so when he's got an extra bye, and Ryan Day doesn't have the bye week to get ready for a big game. So give me Cignetti and his staff with the coaching advantage here, and then I mean I like Curtis Work over Will Howard. If we're just comparing apples to apples here, Curtis Work is the number one quarterback according to Pro Football Focus in college football right now. Um, that doesn't mean nothing. Like I don't put a whole lot of stock and value in Pro Football Focus, but I think that should account for something, and he's been hurt. I know he had the hand injury. He looks fine. I don't think that there's really any reason to believe that he's not at least at 90% in this game, which should be plenty. I really like Surratt. Obviously, the advantage goes to Ohio State when you're comparing the receivers. Ohio State's got the best receivers in the country. They have for a long time. The run game for Ohio State has been surprisingly average, mediocre, considering that they went out and got Judkins and are pairing him with Travion Henderson. Been a little bit better, I think, overall on the ground than Indiana has, but Indiana really hasn't tried to run the football a ton. They execute the passing game so effectively that they don't really have to run the ball very much. But in this game, I think that, to me, I think that the running game has to get involved, and it doesn't matter. I'm not saying any one player has to have at least 100 yards, but I think that they need to cross the 100-yard threshold to be effective, to be more effective in the passing game, and that should, with a balanced approach, should allow for some things to be open in the passing attack there. So those are kind of just comparing. Some ways that this team can win. I think Indiana's got to stay on schedule. Don't get behind the sticks too much. You're probably going to need you're going to need to be at least +1 in the turnover margin, right? In some capacity. I'm not going to say you need at least one turnover because that doesn't do you any good if you give it up 3 times, right? But you're going to need to be positive in the turnover battle against Ohio State, which I mean they have a really good defense. That's going to be tough to do. But surprisingly, Indiana, I mean, going up against um, Ohio State's offense, these two are really comparable. Indiana's the third ranked total yards defense in the country. They're second in yards per play. They're first in the country in rushing yards allowed at 72.2. So is that one of those padlock stats where you look at the game and say whoever rushes for more yards wins the football game? I think it could be, and I like Indiana's passing attack more than Ohio State's right now. Um, so I would definitely give Indiana an advantage. I've rambled on long enough, Mark. I still really like Indiana in this matchup. I'm kind of coming back to my senses here. I think that they can win the football game. The only real disadvantage that I see for Indiana is that they're playing in Columbus. That's
Yeah.
it. Everything else is pretty even. I mean, Ohio State has the Penn State game on their resume, so you can kind of put a little bit more value, I guess, in their statistics. But statistically, the offenses are about the same. The defenses are about the same. And I like Indiana coming off of a bye week, being able to scheme some things up, understanding that this game is essentially their Super Bowl. Like, you have to win this game to get to the next level. I don't think that Indiana goes into this thinking that whether they win or lose, they're going to make the college football playoff. You're Indiana. Not saying that you won't if you lose this game, but you have to treat it like a playoff game, and I think that they will. I think they're going to come out ready, and I think they're going to shock the world this weekend in Columbus.
I'm here for it, brother. I told you I'm going plus the points. I haven't backed off that much. I think if Ohio State wins this, I don't think it's some kind of blowout or anything like that. I think that this is a business trip for Indiana, and I think they'll be ready to conduct business. Um, 13, I've seen it 13 and a half. I feel like that's bait. I think they're baiting people into betting on Ohio State because anything under a couple touchdowns is typically a pretty nice little number, right? 13 and a half, you like it under that 14. 13, you like it because a push, a touchdown, two field goals, difference there. So I feel like this is Vegas trying to bait you into Ohio State. And I think everybody's reaction is obviously going to be, oh, Ohio State versus Indiana. Give me Ohio State. We're both going the opposite direction. And I'm ready to ride that train either way. I'm not throwing $1,000 on it. But I am going to put a little something on it, and I'm going to continue to ride the train that's made me money every single week, just about. That is Indiana. They're a complete wagon, rooting for the Hoosiers this weekend. Let us know in the comment section, what do you think's going on in this one? Give us your score prediction for it. Thank you so much for watching First and Long College Football.